Guys, we've got some interesting realignment stuff to get to on this Saturday. I want to get into this Texas news. I want to talk about some different things I saw via Instagram. But first, we've got a few rumors. It says take it or leave it. We've got Jason Schreier of the Wildcat Authority 247 Sports page reporting that the Pac-12 is concerned that they will be handed a take-it-or-leave-it offer from ESPN. I think this was already rumored a few weeks ago by that source on Twitter. Many have speculated that Pac-12 teams could bolt for the Big 12 if the TV numbers from ESPN are too low. And again, guys, we were told through a source that ESPN was offering the Pac-12 a 12-year deal at around $25 million per team per year. That is the current 10 teams in the Pac-12. And of course, we know the Big Ten and the SEC are going to be making by 2029 around $120 million per year per team. Another quick thing I wanted to discuss. People keep saying that if the Big Ten expands to 20 teams or 24 teams, same thing with the SEC, that the more teams you bring in, you dilute the overall conference. Guys, what I want people to understand, if the Big Ten expands to 20 teams, the idea is they also introduce unequal revenue sharing between the teams in the conference, meaning the Ohio States, the Michigans, the USCs will be the teams that make tons of money, and then teams like Rutgers, teams like Maryland, Northwestern will be cut down in terms of the overall amounts they would make. In theory, if the Big Ten is 24 teams, yes, Ohio State will be earning less unless you introduce some sort of unequal revenue thing like the ACC is kind of touched on, because many teams in the ACC are pissed off about their contract. But that's the whole idea. If the Big Ten goes to 24 teams, they would have to introduce something like that to keep it, in theory, fair, because there's no way if you're Ohio State or you're USC, you're taking a pay cut just so Rutgers can make $100 million, and it's not like Rutgers has any place to go. Like, what if they tell Rutgers, you don't meet the threshold in terms of overall ratings, overall revenue you generate. And I don't hate Rutgers. I'm just using them as an example. There are many teams, Illinois, Northwestern, Purdue, teams in the Big Ten that, if you put a threshold on revenue, viewership, attendance, some of these teams aren't meeting it. You're only going to make X amount of money from a TV deal. That's the idea if it expands to 24 teams, because people keep saying it's going to dilute the. I'm sorry I got off on this tangent. I've seen it a lot. If it expands to 20 teams or 24 teams, the theory is we go to unequal revenue sharing, which is something the ACC has talked about. That's what I would think, because I don't think it wouldn't make any sense to expand and then cut and dilute it. That's the same issue the Big 12 is facing, where if they add 4 teams, their structure will be diluted to where if you're adding 4 teams, the teams in the Big 12 will be making less money on the TV deal. And the report is if they add 2 teams, they'll be making more. But if they add 4 teams, which goes up to 16, they'll be making less. That's where the whole idea of the Big 12 just going to 14 teams, adding Colorado, adding Arizona, that's where that came from. But wow, I'm sorry, I just went off on a tangent about that. And you get back to this take it or leave it. So yeah, guys, the Pac-12 at this point, the only thing it has going for it, it doesn't have a big draw. Even a team like Oregon or Washington, they're just not going to move the needle. It does have live football in the so-called fourth window in terms of 10 o'clock Eastern, and that's what ESPN would want. And I actually think this whole situation with the Big Ten leaving ESPN, it can only help the Pac-12, because it's not like CBS was interested in the Pac-12 in the first place. Now ESPN, I'm not saying they're desperate, but you would think ESPN's going to have more money that they would have allocated towards a $300 million TV contract with the Big Ten. you're going to be able to use that money, obviously, not only for the Pac-12, but also the Big 12. And I think that's where everything changes. The Big 12, I think, becomes a major a position that ESPN wants after missing out on the Big 10 and having any of their TV rights. They will switch their focus to the Big 12. But I think the Pac-12, the news of the Big 10 breaking off from ESPN can only help the Pac-12, because it's not like CBS was interested in the Pac-12 in the first place. It makes no sense. CBS wants a 3:30 game, big-time game. That's SEC or that's Big 10. And then there was also the theory that they might try and do something with the Big 12, but I think the Pac-12 is certainly going to be under the umbrella of ESPN. You can already see it with many of these ESPN writers basically writing Pac-12 propaganda left and right. We see it with the Big 12 as well. That's why this whole thing's kind of turned into a journalistic cesspool. There's just no journalistic integrity. That is something that I have, guys. That's why I'm bringing you all this news. I'm trying to keep it as fair as possible. I am a Big 10 fan. So that's the thing. I have no bias. Some people say I'm biased towards the Pac-12. Other people say I'm biased towards the Big 12. And it's become this weird feud and really unhealthy between the Pac-12 and Big 12 fans that you've got big. If I'm a Big 12 fan, I want to eat the Pac-12, because we just saw what happened last year where the Pac-12 had the same opportunity. They didn't take advantage of it. Now look at the position they're in. They could have theoretically made the Big 12 a slightly better version of the American. It's the same thing the Big 12 can do with the Pac-12 in terms of stealing all their teams and making the Pac-12 basically a slightly better version of the Mountain West. So it is an interesting situation. And then we've got this rumor, a potential Big 10 West Wing from Nicole Archbach, who floated the idea that the Big 10 could further expand a Western wing. The Pac-12 teams that would be linked to the Big 10 are Oregon, Washington, Stanford, and California. Technically, she didn't report it, but she is very connected in the Big 10, and she has a tendency to float out ideas. Yeah, this woman is very tuned in, so when she says something, she's probably getting a rumor from somewhere, so that is interesting that she is saying they could look to expand, and they might be interested in Oregon, Washington, Stanford, and Cal. I think if it goes to 18, it's Notre Dame and it's Stanford. That's just my opinion. The Big 10, that is. But there also is the theory floating around the Big 10. They don't really care about being at even or odd numbers. We've seen them be at an odd number in the past. Personally, I'm more traditional. I think if you're going to have a conference, it needs to be an even number. It's just something I like, but the Big 10 could say whatever. Clearly, Notre Dame is the only team that really adds a ton of value, and the whole idea of bringing Stanford was a way to entice Notre Dame anyways. So if they can just get Notre Dame, there's really no reason to bring in Stanford. And then we've got a Big 12 prediction. It says, I say, in this tweet, it says, I say Big 12 ends up with ESPN, especially if they can pluck a couple of Pac-12, he calls them Pac-10. I guess they are the Pac-10 at this point, but either way, the Pac-10, Pac-12 schools. So yeah, certainly ESPN is going to look to pivot. And the whole idea was CBS was rumored to be interested in the Big 12, and people are still saying they're interested in the Big 12. Guys, I don't know how we can speculate that CBS would still be interested in other college football. CBS is literally doing the exact same deal they have right now with the Big 10. They're just switching from the SEC to the Big 10. There's been no rumor that they want to expand. The whole idea of CBS and the Big 12 was because the SEC deal was ending and nobody thought they would pay enough money to get in with the Big 10. Everyone thought the Big 10 was going to be controlled by Fox, number one, and then by ESPN. And now we've got CBS and NBC coming in here. I think the Big 12 is basically pigeonholed with ESPN at this point, because the Big 12 had a big TV contract with Fox in the mid to late 2000s, and then up until recently, but now their new one is probably going to be under ESPN. And the stuff that, the important stuff is ESPN should get the Tier 1 rights to the Big 12. I really can't see any other conference. Fox is completely out of the picture. They're going to have to pay $1 billion to get all the Big 10 games. And it really leaves ESPN with that extra money that they would have used for the Big 10. They're going to reallocate it, and they were already going to get the Pac-12 either way, but now they shift their focus to the Big 12. And guys, we do have a few different things to react to here. College football tiers. This is always something fun. Guys, you look at this, and you do start to wonder, we've seen so much decline in ratings. We've seen so much decline in people that care about college football. There's just such a lack of parity. And you look at the championship favorites, there's 3 teams. Like, how many teams can realistically win the national? Like, you could make an argument 2 teams can realistically win the national championship and legitimately have an argument. Ohio State and Alabama. Can we, you could say Georgia. Do we really think Stetson Bennett is going to win 2 rings back to back? Come on. There's just, unfortunately, right now, the way it's set up, there's no parity, and it's actually getting worse because people are saying NIL is spreading out the talent, but then you see Texas A&M completely cheat and get 18 out of the top 100 players last year, and Alabama signed 15. So the talent is still going to the top schools, and it's playoff contenders. Can Notre Dame, I don't even think Notre Dame can make the playoff with their schedule. A&M is too young. I guess A&M next year. Oklahoma, it's major speculation, and Oklahoma is 0-4 in the playoffs. Michigan, I'd be shocked. Utah, maybe Utah. I really think for the health of college football, if Utah somehow made the national championship, or if Miami made the playoff, I think it would be great for the sport. We need something to happen to where, if the 4 teams in the playoff, the worst case is Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, and Clemson. That's the worst case. You need one of these teams, whether it's Pac-12, whether it's an upset, a wild card, Miami. They're a fun team. You need something like that. And then this is predicting the first AP poll. I thought I would show this because the AP poll does come out on Monday. And I do disagree with this. The first 3 teams, I think, are so obvious in terms of AP. It's Bama, it's Ohio State, it's Georgia, in that exact order. The number 4 team will be Clemson. I am sure of it. After that, I think they go Utah at number 5, probably Notre Dame at number 6. And I really think they move Texas A&M down quite a bit. USC will be outside of the top 10. Michigan State will be lower. NC State I could see sneaking into the top 10. Oklahoma's probably right around 12. Baylor's probably right around 13. And the rest are whatever. But I'm just saying, I think it's pretty set, the top 4 teams of the AP poll. I would be shocked if it's not Alabama 1, Ohio State 2, Georgia, and then they will go Clemson at number 4. And then I would think the way the AP poll tends to vote, how these writers think, they're going to go Utah number 5. That's just my opinion. This is the coaches poll reaction based on where the teams are ranked. So he says Notre Dame is too high. I probably agree. I would probably put Notre Dame at number 7. A&M too high. I agree. Utah too high. I say they're fine at number 8. Baylor too, I disagree. I think Baylor 10 is a very fine ranking for them. Oklahoma State, I completely disagree. I think Oklahoma State is going to finish unranked. Oregon too high. I was surprised Oregon was ranked 12. I wonder if a lot of that is to drum up the week 1 matchup with Georgia. NC State at 13, that's fine. Michigan State at 14. USC, you're predicting. I agree with Pittsburgh. I don't think Pittsburgh's a top 25 team losing Jordan Addison. Miami, I think, is too low. I would put Miami at number 10. They've got a star quarterback. Miami is so talented on the defensive side of the ball, guys. If you don't know, they've got 2 guys specifically, James Williams and Leonard Taylor, who are just going to be studs. And you can see the rest of those rankings. And then we've got the new Big Ten. This coming in here. This is a very nice graph off Instagram. A very pleasant visual. You can see the additions of Stanford and Notre Dame. And in my opinion, this is what we're looking at. the next most realistic Big Ten expansion being Stanford and Notre Dame. Of course, that brings a lot of questions. Does the Big Ten just say we're going to 20 teams and also bring in California and Stanford, or would they go to the ACC and try and take Virginia and maybe North Carolina, or North Carolina and Duke? And then I know a lot of people are also saying you can't poach ACC teams because of their grant of rights deal that's signed through 2036. Guys, the ACC can get out of that deal. Though they're going to have their lawyers. If 8 teams vote to get out of it, they can get out of it. So I think they're either going to renegotiate it and give Clemson more money through unequal revenue sharing and give Florida State more money, or those teams are going to get out of it completely. And you'll see teams go to the SEC, and maybe a few teams like Virginia, like North Carolina, go to the Big Ten. Of course, if it expands to 24 teams, the Big Ten will be poaching ACC programs. And I would say it would be North Carolina, Duke, and Virginia. That's what I would say. And then you also take Notre Dame, Stanford, and then also maybe an Oregon or a Washington if you are going to 24 teams, and it would be unequal revenue sharing. So the big boys at the top still make the money. It would dilute the smaller teams, but at the end of the day, you'd still be making so much more money through the structure of it that it would make sense for any team. Like, if Oregon is getting $25 million per year in a horrible Pac-12 ESPN TV deal, even if the Big Ten money is diluted down to $75 million per year, that's an increase times 3. You're going to do that no matter what. So it's just, there's such a gap right now. That's what I'm trying to explain. That's what I see happening. But guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description. I'm, of course, the Depressed Ginger. Thank you for watching.